What would you do if a millionaire CEO publicly denied your child was his, only to come crawling back years later when the resemblance became undeniable? This isn't just another paternity drama. This is the story of Sarah Mitchell, whose 2-year-old son became the living, breathing proof that money can't buy your way out of the truth. When Marcus Wellington first saw little Jamie at that charity gala, his face went white as a sheet, because staring back at him was his own childhood face, down to the same rare green eyes and distinctive cleft chin that runs in his family. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Please subscribe to my channel for more sweet videos like this. Let the story continue. Marcus Stone stood frozen in the middle of the busy coffee shop, his expensive suit suddenly feeling too tight around his chest. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the noise of chattering customers and clinking cups. There, sitting at a small table near the window, was Emma Martinez, the woman he had thrown out of his life 2 years ago. But it wasn't Emma that made his world stop spinning. It was the little boy in her arms. The child couldn't have been older than 2 years old, with messy dark hair that stuck up in all directions just like Marcus's did every morning. The boy had the same sharp green eyes that Marcus saw in the mirror every day. Even the way the child wrinkled his nose when he laughed was exactly what Marcus did when he found something funny. Marcus felt like he was looking at a tiny version of himself. His hands started shaking as he remembered the last time he had seen Emma. She had been standing in his office, tears streaming down her face, holding a piece of paper that she said proved he was going to be a father. But Marcus had been so angry, so sure she was lying to get his money, that he had called security to throw her out. "That baby isn't mine," he had shouted as the guards dragged her away. "I'll never believe it's mine." Now, watching the little boy giggle and play with his toy car on the table, Marcus felt sick to his stomach. The child looked exactly like the old photos of Marcus when he was that age. Every feature, every expression, every tiny detail screamed that this was his son. Emma hadn't noticed him yet. She was too busy making funny faces at the boy, who clapped his hands with joy every time she did something silly. The love between them was so clear that it made Marcus's chest hurt. This should have been his family. This should have been his life. But he had destroyed it all, because he was too proud and too scared to believe the truth. Marcus took a step forward, then stopped. What could he say? How could he explain that he had been wrong? How could he tell Emma that he had spent 2 years trying to forget her, only to realize that she had been telling the truth all along? The little boy suddenly looked up and stared right at Marcus. Those green eyes, his own eyes, seemed to look straight into his soul. The child tilted his head to the side, just like Marcus did when he was thinking hard about something. That's when Emma followed her son's gaze and saw Marcus standing there. Her face went completely white, the smile disappeared from her lips, and her whole body went stiff with shock. She quickly pulled the little boy closer to her chest, as if she was protecting him from something dangerous. "No," she whispered, but Marcus could read her lips even from across the room. "Not now, not like this." The little boy started to fuss, sensing his mother's fear. He reached his tiny hands up toward Emma's face, trying to make her smile again, but Emma couldn't take her eyes off Marcus. Her hands were shaking as she gathered up the boy's toys and threw them into her bag. She was going to run, just like she had run 2 years ago when he broke her heart. Marcus realized this might be his only chance. If he let her leave now, he might never see his son again. Because deep in his heart he knew the truth that he had been too stubborn to admit before. This was definitely his child. He started walking toward their table, pushing past other customers who gave him dirty looks. His expensive leather shoes clicked loudly on the tile floor with each step. Emma heard him coming and started to stand up, but the little boy was heavy in her arms, and she was moving too slowly. "Emma, wait," Marcus called out, his voice cracking with emotion. "Please don't run. We need to talk." Emma finally got to her feet, holding the little boy tight against her shoulder. The child was looking over Emma's shoulder at Marcus with curious eyes, not understanding why his mother was so upset. "There's nothing to talk about," Emma said in a voice that was barely louder than a whisper. You made your choice 2 years ago. You said this baby wasn't yours. You called me a liar and a gold digger. I was wrong, Marcus said, taking another step closer. I can see it now. He looks just like... Don't, Emma interrupted, her voice getting stronger and angrier. Don't you dare. You don't get to just show up and decide you want to be a father now. Where were you when I was sick every morning for 9 months? Where were you when I had to work 2 jobs while I was pregnant because you wouldn't help me? Where were you when he was born and I was all alone in the hospital? The little boy started to cry, frightened by the tension in his mother's voice. Emma began bouncing him gently, trying to calm him down, but her own tears were starting to fall. You threw us away like garbage, she continued, her voice breaking. You said we meant nothing to you, so why should we mean anything to you now? Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Every word Emma said was true, and it hurt more than any business deal he had ever lost. He had been so focused on protecting his money and his reputation that he had thrown away the most important thing in the world. Because I love you, he said desperately. I never stopped loving you. I was just scared and stupid and... Love? Emma laughed bitterly. You don't know what love means. Love means believing in someone when they tell you the truth. Love means standing by someone when things get hard. Love means... She stopped talking and looked down at her son, who had finally stopped crying and was looking back and forth between his mother and Marcus with wide, confused eyes. Love means putting your child first, she finished quietly, and that's something you could never do. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but Emma was already walking toward the door. The little boy looked back at him over Emma's shoulder, and for a moment, their eyes met again. Marcus saw something in those green eyes, the same eyes he had, that made his heart break into a million pieces. Then they were gone, disappearing into the crowd of people walking down the busy street. Marcus stood there in the middle of the coffee shop, surrounded by strangers who were staring at him like he was crazy. He had just lost his son all over again. But this time, it was so much worse, because now he knew exactly what he had given up. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. Detective Morrison? He said when someone answered. This is Marcus Stone. I need you to find someone for me. And this time, it's not about business. This time, it's about my family. But as Marcus hung up the phone, he had no idea that Emma's life was about to become much more complicated than either of them could imagine. Because Emma had been keeping secrets, dangerous secrets that could destroy everything she had built for her son. And Marcus was about to discover that finding his family was going to be the easy part. The hard part was going to be keeping them alive. 2 years earlier, Emma Martinez had been the happiest woman in the world. She worked as an assistant at Stone Industries, Marcus Stone's giant company that made computer parts for big businesses. Every morning she would put on her best dress and walk into the tall glass building, excited to start another day. Emma wasn't like the other women who worked there. While they spent their money on expensive clothes and fancy cars, Emma sent most of her paycheck to her sick mother in Mexico. She lived in a tiny apartment and ate simple meals, but she was happy because she had a good job and was helping her family. Marcus Stone was like a prince from a fairy tale. He was tall and handsome, with dark hair that was always perfectly styled and green eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore suits that cost more than Emma made in a month, and he drove a car that was worth more than most people's houses. At first, Marcus barely noticed Emma. She was just another employee to him, someone who brought him coffee and organized his papers. But Emma noticed him. She watched how he worked late into the night, how he worried about his employees when the company had problems, and how he sometimes looked very lonely despite having all that money. The first time Marcus really looked at Emma was during a big storm. The electricity went out in the whole building, and everyone was stuck there until morning. While other people complained and worried, Emma found candles and made everyone feel better by telling funny stories about her childhood in Mexico. Marcus found himself laughing for the first time in months. When Emma offered to share her sandwich with him because the restaurants were all closed, he realized that she was different from anyone he had ever met. You don't have to take care of me, Marcus had said, surprised that someone would be kind to him without wanting anything back. Everyone needs someone to take care of them sometimes, Emma had replied with a smile that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. After that night, everything changed. Marcus started asking Emma to work late with him, but really he just wanted to spend time with her. They would talk for hours about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Emma told him about her mother's illness and how she wanted to become a nurse someday to help other people. Marcus told her about how lonely it was to have so much money but no one who truly cared about him. Their friendship slowly turned into love. Marcus had never met anyone as pure and kind as Emma. She didn't care about his money or his fancy things. She loved him for who he was inside, not what he owned. For 6 months, they were secretly together. Marcus would pick Emma up after work in his regular car instead of his expensive one, so people wouldn't gossip. They would go to small restaurants where no one knew who Marcus was, and they would hold hands and talk like any normal couple. Emma was the happiest she had ever been. She felt like she was living in a dream where the handsome prince had fallen in love with the poor girl. Marcus made her feel beautiful and special and loved. But their secret couldn't last forever. Vincent Morrison was Marcus's best friend and business partner. He was also the greediest man Emma had ever met. Vincent didn't like that Marcus was spending time with Emma instead of focusing only on making more money. "She's using you," Vincent told Marcus one day when Emma wasn't around. "Can't you see? She's just a poor girl trying to trick a rich man into taking care of her. Girls like her are always looking for someone to pay their bills." Marcus defended Emma at first. He knew she wasn't like that. But Vincent was very good at planting seeds of doubt in people's minds. "Think about it," Vincent continued. "What does a cleaning lady's daughter from Mexico want with a millionaire CEO? She's probably planning to get pregnant, so you'll have to marry her and give her money for the rest of her life." "Emma isn't like that," Marcus said, but his voice wasn't as strong as before. "They're all like that when there's enough money involved," Vincent replied. "Just be careful, my friend. Don't let her fool you like so many other rich men have been fooled." Vincent's words started to eat away at Marcus's confidence. Every time Emma smiled at him, he wondered if she was thinking about his money. Every time she said she loved him, he questioned whether she really meant it. But Emma had no idea that Vincent was poisoning Marcus's mind against her. She was too busy being happy and planning their future together. She had even started taking night classes to become a nurse, inspired by Marcus's belief in her dreams. Then came the night that changed everything. Emma had been feeling sick for a few days, but she thought it was just stress from work. When the doctor told her she was pregnant, she felt like her heart might explode with joy. She and Marcus were going to have a baby together. Their love had created a new life. She imagined how happy Marcus would be when she told him. They could finally stop hiding their relationship. They could get married and be a real family. The baby would have everything Emma never had: a father who loved them, a beautiful home, and enough money to never worry about anything. Emma spent hours planning how to tell Marcus the news. She bought a tiny pair of baby shoes and wrapped them in a box with a note that said, "From your baby and me, with all our love." But when Emma walked into Marcus's office that evening with the gift box in her hands, she found Vincent there too. Both men looked serious and angry, like they had been having a big argument. "Marcus," Emma said softly, "I have something wonderful to tell you." Marcus looked at her with eyes that seemed different, colder than she had ever seen them. "I think I know what you're going to say, Emma. And I think you should know that Vincent has told me the truth about women like you." Emma felt confused and scared. "Women like me? Marcus, what are you talking about?" "Gold diggers," Vincent said with a cruel smile. "Women who sleep with rich men hoping to get pregnant so they can demand money for the next 18 years. Emma felt like the floor was falling out from under her feet. I'm not. Marcus, you know me. You know I love you. This baby's a gift, not a trick." "A gift?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "How convenient that you got pregnant right when my company is making the most money it's ever made. How convenient that you're telling me this right after the newspapers wrote articles about how much I'm worth." Emma set the gift box on Marcus's desk with shaking hands. "Marcus, please open this. Let me explain." "I don't need to open anything," Marcus said coldly. "And I don't need any explanations. I know exactly what this is. You saw an opportunity to trap a rich man, and you took it." "That's not true," Emma cried, tears starting to fall down her cheeks. "I love you. This baby is yours, and I thought you would be happy." "Happy?" Marcus stood up from his desk, his face red with anger. "Happy that some cleaning lady's daughter is trying to steal my money with lies about a baby that probably isn't even mine?" Each word hit Emma like a punch to the stomach. The man she loved, the man she thought loved her back, was destroying her heart with every cruel sentence. "Marcus, please," she whispered, "don't do this. Don't throw away what we have because of what Vincent is telling you. You know who I am. You know I would never lie to you." But Marcus had already made up his mind. Vincent's poison had worked too well. "Security!" Marcus called loudly. Two big men in uniforms came into the office immediately, like they had been waiting outside the door. "Please escort Miss Martinez out of the building," Marcus said without looking at Emma. "She's no longer welcome here." "Marcus, no!" Emma begged as the security guards took her arms. "Please don't do this. This baby needs its father. I need you." But Marcus had already turned his back on her. "Make sure she never comes back," he told the guards. "And if she tries to contact me again, call the police." As the guards dragged Emma out of the office, she could hear Vincent laughing behind her. "You made the right choice, my friend," Vincent said to Marcus. "Women like her are nothing but trouble." Emma was thrown out of the building like a piece of trash. She sat on the sidewalk in the rain, holding her stomach where her baby was growing, and cried until she had no tears left. That night, Emma packed her few belongings and left the city. She couldn't bear to stay in a place where she might see Marcus or be reminded of how badly he had hurt her. She moved to a small town 3 hours away where no one knew her story. For 2 years, Emma worked hard to build a new life for herself and her son. She got her nursing degree while she was pregnant, working in a hospital cafeteria during the day and studying at night. After the baby was born, she found a job at a small clinic where the doctors were kind and didn't ask too many questions about why a young mother was all alone. Emma named her son Daniel, which meant, "God is my judge." She figured if Marcus didn't want to be the boy's father, then God would have to judge whether Emma was a good enough parent for both of them. Daniel grew up to be exactly like his father in every way except the most important one. Daniel was kind and loving, while Marcus had become cold and cruel. Emma never told Daniel about his father. What was the point? Marcus had made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with them. Emma decided it was better for Daniel to grow up thinking his father was a good man who had died, rather than knowing the truth about a father who had thrown them away. But Emma had been keeping a bigger secret than just Daniel's father. The reason she had really left the city wasn't just because of her broken heart. The night Marcus had thrown her out, Vincent Morrison had followed her home. "You think this is over?" Vincent had said, cornering Emma in the parking lot of her apartment building. "You think you can just walk away and forget about everything you heard in that office?" Emma had been confused and scared. "I don't know what you mean. I didn't hear anything special." Vincent had grabbed her arm so tightly it left bruises. "You heard me and Marcus talking about the Henderson deal. You heard us discussing things that could get us both in serious trouble if the wrong people found out." Emma remembered the conversation Vincent was talking about. Before she had arrived with her baby news, Marcus and Vincent had been discussing a business deal that sounded very dishonest. They were planning to lie to their investors about how much money the company was really making. "I won't tell anyone," Emma had promised Vincent. "I just want to leave and never see any of you again." "That's not good enough," Vincent had replied with an evil smile. "I can't take the chance that you might change your mind someday. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear. You're going to move far away and never come back. And if you ever try to contact Marcus or tell anyone what you heard, I'll make sure you and your baby have an accident." Vincent had made it very clear that he wasn't just threatening Emma, he was threatening her unborn child too. So Emma had run. She had spent 2 years looking over her shoulder, wondering if Vincent was watching her. She had changed her last name and tried to become invisible, all to protect her son. But now Marcus had found them in that coffee shop, and if Marcus could find them, That meant Vincent could find them too. As Emma sat in her small apartment that night, watching Daniel sleep in his crib, she realized that her worst nightmare was about to come true. Vincent Morrison would never let her live in peace, especially now that Marcus knew about Daniel. Emma packed a bag with shaking hands. She and Daniel would have to run again. They would have to start over in a new place with new names. But as she was folding Daniel's little clothes, Emma heard footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. Heavy footsteps that stopped right outside her door. Then came a soft knock. "Emma?" Marcus's voice called through the door. "I know you're in there. We need to talk." Emma's heart stopped. How had Marcus found her apartment? She had been so careful to stay hidden. "Emma, please," Marcus continued. "I know you're scared, but I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to see my son." Emma crept to the window and looked down at the street. Marcus's expensive car was parked outside, but there was another car behind it, a black car with tinted windows that Emma didn't recognize. Someone else had followed Marcus to her apartment. As Emma watched in horror, two men in dark suits got out of the black car and started walking toward the building. Vincent Morrison had found them. Emma's hands shook as she quietly grabbed Daniel from his crib. The little boy stirred but didn't wake up, his tiny fist curling around a piece of her shirt. Emma held him close to her chest, trying not to let her fear wake him up. The knocking on her door got louder. "Emma, I can hear you moving around in there," Marcus called out. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I want to apologize. I want to make things right." Emma wanted to believe Marcus was telling the truth, but she had learned not to trust anyone completely. The black car outside proved that Marcus wasn't alone, and Emma knew exactly who was in that car. She crept to her bedroom window and quietly opened it. Her apartment was on the second floor, but there was a fire escape that led down to the alley behind the building. If she could get to her car without being seen, maybe she and Daniel could disappear again. But as Emma climbed out onto the fire escape with Daniel in her arms, she heard footsteps on the metal stairs below her. Someone was coming up from the bottom. She was trapped. "Going somewhere, Emma?" Emma's blood turned to ice. Vincent Morrison stepped into view on the fire escape, blocking her path down. He looked exactly the same as he had 2 years ago. Expensive suit, cold eyes, and a smile that made Emma's skin crawl. "Hello, Vincent," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Did you really think you could hide from me forever?" Vincent asked, climbing up the stairs toward her. "Did you think I wouldn't keep track of where you went?" Emma backed up toward her window, but she could hear Marcus still knocking on her front door. She was stuck between the two men who had destroyed her life. "What do you want?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. "The same thing I've always wanted," Vincent replied. "Your silence. Permanent silence." Daniel started to wake up in Emma's arms. He looked around with sleepy eyes and saw the strange man on the fire escape. Daniel wasn't scared yet. He was too young to understand danger, but he could feel his mother's fear. "Mama?" Daniel said in his small voice, reaching up to touch Emma's face. Vincent's eyes went wide when he saw the little boy. Well, so Marcus was right. You really did have his baby." Vincent laughed in a way that made Emma sick to her stomach. "The kid looks exactly like Marcus did when we were children. There's no denying that DNA." "Leave him out of this," Emma said fiercely. "Daniel never hurt anyone. This is between you and me." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," Vincent said, still climbing toward them. "You see, Emma, this child is now evidence. Evidence that you and Marcus had a relationship. Evidence that you might have told Marcus things about our business dealings. Evidence that could ruin everything I've worked for." The knocking on Emma's front door suddenly stopped. Then Emma heard a different sound. The sound of someone picking the lock. "Looks like Marcus finally got tired of being polite," Vincent said with amusement. He always was too impatient. The front door opened, and Emma could hear Marcus's footsteps in her living room. "Emma?" Marcus called out. "Where are you? I know you're here. Your car is outside." Vincent held a finger to his lips, telling Emma to be quiet. But Daniel chose that moment to start crying. He was getting hungry and tired, and all the tension was making him fussy. Marcus heard the baby crying and followed the sound toward the bedroom. "Emma, what's wrong?" Marcus said, his voice full of worry. "Why is Daniel crying?" Vincent cursed under his breath. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something that made Emma's heart stop. A gun. "One sound from you and the kid gets hurt," Vincent whispered to Emma. "Do you understand me?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. She bounced Daniel gently, trying to keep him quiet, but the little boy could sense something was very wrong. Marcus appeared in the bedroom doorway and saw the open window. He rushed over and looked out onto the fire escape. "Vincent?" Marcus said, confused. "What are you doing here? How did you know where to find Emma?" "Hello, old friend," Vincent said, pointing his gun at Emma and Daniel. "I've been keeping an eye on your former girlfriend for the past 2 years, just making sure she didn't cause any trouble for us." Marcus's face went pale. "Put the gun down, Vincent. What's going on? Why do you have a weapon?" "Because your little Emma here knows too much," Vincent replied. "She heard us talking about the Henderson deal that night you threw her out. She knows we've been stealing money from our investors. She knows we've been lying about the company's profits." Emma watched Marcus's face as he realized what Vincent was saying. She saw the exact moment when Marcus understood that Vincent had been using him all along. "You mean," Marcus said slowly, "you mean Emma was telling the truth about everything? The baby is really mine? And you've been lying to me about the business deals?" "Oh, Marcus," Vincent laughed cruelly. "You're so smart about technology, but so stupid about people. Yes, the baby is yours. Yes, Emma really loved you. And yes, I've been stealing from our company for years while you thought we were just making smart business moves." Marcus looked at Emma and Daniel with horror in his eyes. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I believed him instead of believing you. I threw away my family because I was an idiot." "How touching," Vincent said sarcastically. "But this reunion is going to be very short. You see, Emma knows enough to send us both to prison for the rest of our lives, and I can't let that happen." "You're talking about murder," Marcus said, stepping toward Vincent. "I won't let you hurt them." "You won't let me?" Vincent laughed again. "Marcus, you're going to help me, because if you don't, I'll tell everyone that you were part of the stealing from the beginning. I have documents with your signature on them. I have recordings of our conversations. If I go down, you go down with me." Emma realized that Vincent had been planning this for a long time. He had been setting Marcus up to take the blame if they ever got caught. "But there's a way out," Vincent continued. "We make it look like Emma and the baby had an accident. A gas leak in the apartment, maybe. Very tragic. And then there's no one left to tell the police about our business deals." "You're insane," Marcus said. "I would never hurt Emma or my son." "Then you'll go to prison," Vincent replied simply. "Your choice, old friend. Your freedom or their lives." Daniel started crying harder, frightened by all the angry voices. Emma tried to comfort him, but her own hands were shaking too much. "Shh, baby," she whispered to Daniel. "Mama's here. Everything's going to be okay." But Emma didn't believe her own words. Vincent had them trapped, and he clearly didn't plan to let any of them leave alive. That's when Emma remembered something. 2 years ago, when Vincent had first threatened her, Emma had been smart enough to record their conversation on her phone. She had kept that recording as insurance, hoping she would never need to use it. The recording was hidden in a safety deposit box at the bank downtown. If Emma could somehow get Vincent to confess again, and if Marcus could hear the truth about what had really happened, maybe they could turn the tables on Vincent. "You want to know something funny, Vincent?" Emma said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I've been waiting 2 years for you to find me." Vincent looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been collecting evidence." Emma lied smoothly. "Evidence about all the money you've been stealing. Evidence about how you threatened me and my baby. Evidence that proves Marcus had nothing to do with your crimes." "You're bluffing," Vincent said, but Emma could see doubt in his eyes. "Am I?" Emma asked. "Do you really want to take that chance? Because if something happens to me and Daniel, all that evidence automatically gets sent to the FBI. It was a complete lie, but Vincent didn't know that. Marcus was watching this conversation with growing understanding. He was starting to see how Vincent had manipulated everything from the beginning. "Vincent," Marcus said quietly, "tell me the truth. Did you threaten Emma when she was pregnant?" Vincent's attention turned back to Marcus. She was going to ruin everything. She heard too much that night. I had to make sure she kept quiet. "So you threatened a pregnant woman?" Marcus's voice was getting dangerous. "You threatened my unborn child?" "It was business," Vincent snapped. "Nothing personal, but she wouldn't listen to reason." "And you convinced me she was lying about the baby being mine?" "That part was easy," Vincent said with a cruel smile. "You were already paranoid about women wanting your money. I just had to water the seeds of doubt you'd already planted in your own mind." Emma saw Marcus's hands clench into fists. She could see the rage building in his green eyes, the same green eyes that Daniel had inherited. "You destroyed my family," Marcus said in a voice that was barely controlled. "You made me throw away the woman I loved and the son I should have been raising." "Your family was going to destroy our business," Vincent shouted back. "Everything we built together." "Everything you built on lies and theft," Marcus roared. "That's when everything happened at once." Marcus lunged toward Vincent, trying to grab the gun. Vincent swung around to shoot Marcus, taking his attention off Emma for just a second. Emma saw her chance. She jumped back through her bedroom window into the apartment. Still holding Daniel tight, she ran to her front door and yanked it open, planning to run down the hallway and call for help. But Vincent had brought backup. 2 more men in dark suits were standing in the hallway, blocking her escape. One of them smiled at Emma like a predator who had just cornered its prey. "Going somewhere, lady?" the man asked. Emma heard the sound of fighting on the fire escape as Marcus and Vincent struggled for the gun. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. A gunshot. "Marcus!" Emma screamed. One of the men in the hallway grabbed Emma's arm. "Don't worry about your boyfriend, sweetheart. You're going to have bigger problems in a minute." But Emma wasn't going down without a fight. Not when her son's life was in danger. She had spent 2 years learning to be strong and independent. She had worked hard jobs and overcome every obstacle life had thrown at her. She wasn't the same scared girl who had been thrown out of Marcus's office. Emma kicked the man, holding her as hard as she could. When he doubled over in pain, she ran toward her kitchen. She needed a weapon, something to protect herself and Daniel. Behind her, she could hear the men chasing her, and from the fire escape, she could hear Vincent laughing. "You can run all you want, Emma," Vincent called out. "But there's nowhere to hide. You should have stayed hidden when you had the chance." Emma reached her kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife she could find. She turned around to face Vincent's men, holding Daniel in one arm and the knife in the other. "Stay back," she warned them. "I'll fight all of you if I have to." The men laughed at her, like the idea of a small woman with a baby defending herself was funny to them. But they had no idea how fierce a mother could be when her child was in danger. And they had no idea that Marcus Stone was still alive, still fighting, and angrier than he had ever been in his entire life. The kitchen fell silent, except for Daniel's frightened crying and the sound of Emma's heavy breathing. The 2 men in dark suits stared at her, trying to decide if a woman with a baby and a kitchen knife was really a threat to them. That's when Marcus appeared in the bedroom doorway behind them. His expensive suit was torn and dirty from fighting on the fire escape. There was blood on his forehead where Vincent had hit him with the gun, but his green eyes burned with fury. In his hand, he held Vincent's gun. "Get away from my family," Marcus said in a voice that was deadly calm. The 2 men spun around, reaching for their own weapons, but Marcus was faster. He had grown up poor on the streets before he became rich, and he remembered how to fight when his life depended on it. "I said, get away from them," Marcus repeated, pointing the gun at the closest man. "Now." "Boss!" one of the men called out toward the fire escape. "We need backup in here." But there was no answer from Vincent. Marcus smiled grimly. "Your boss is taking a little nap on the fire escape," Marcus said. "It turns out he's not as tough as he thought he was." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. Marcus was alive, and he was protecting them. But she knew this wasn't over yet. Vincent had too much to lose, to give up easily. Emma, Marcus said without taking his eyes off the two men, take Daniel and get behind me. We're going to walk out of here together. Emma moved carefully around the men, holding Daniel close. When she reached Marcus, she could see the determination in his face. This wasn't the same man who had thrown her out of his office 2 years ago. This Marcus was willing to fight for his family. Marcus, Emma whispered. Vincent said he has evidence that could send you to prison too. What if he was telling the truth? Then we'll deal with it together, Marcus replied. I'm not losing you and Daniel again, not for anything. One of Vincent's men made a sudden move toward his jacket, but Marcus was ready. The sound of the gunshot was deafening in the small apartment. The man grabbed his shoulder and fell to the ground, crying out in pain. The next one goes through your heart, Marcus warned the second man. Your choice. The second man raised his hands in surrender. Okay, don't shoot. Vincent's not paying us enough to die for this. Smart man, Marcus said. Now you're going to help your friend walk out of here, and you're never going to bother my family again. If I see either of you anywhere near Emma or Daniel, I'll make sure you both disappear permanently. Do you understand me? Both men nodded quickly. They clearly hadn't expected Marcus to fight back so hard. They helped each other toward the door, leaving Emma and Marcus alone with Daniel. But just as they reached the front door, Vincent appeared behind them. His face was bloody and his expensive suit was ruined, but he was still holding a second gun that he had hidden in his ankle holster. Nobody's going anywhere, Vincent snarled. This ends tonight, one way or another. Marcus immediately stepped in front of Emma and Daniel, shielding them with his body. It's over, Vincent. The police are already on their way. One of the neighbors must have called them when they heard the gunshots. Then we don't have much time, Vincent said, pointing his gun at Marcus. But I can still finish what I started. If I can't have the company, then nobody can. Emma realized that Vincent had completely lost his mind. He was willing to kill all of them just to keep his secrets hidden. Vincent, Emma said, stepping out from behind Marcus despite his attempts to keep her protected. What if I told you I recorded our conversation from 2 years ago? What if I told you I have proof that Marcus wasn't involved in your crimes? Vincent's eyes narrowed. You're lying. You were too scared and pregnant to think that clearly. Try me, Emma said boldly. The recording is in a safety deposit box downtown. If anything happens to me, my lawyer has instructions to give it to the FBI. This was still a lie, but Emma was desperate to buy them time. She could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. Even if that's true, Vincent said, it doesn't matter anymore. Too much has happened tonight. Too many witnesses. The only way this ends clean is if all 3 of you have an accident. That's when Daniel, who had been quietly listening to all the angry voices, did something that changed everything. The little boy looked directly at Vincent and said his first clear sentence, "Bad man hurt Mama?" The innocence in Daniel's voice, the pure confusion of a child who didn't understand why adults were being mean to his mother, hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Even Vincent's gun hand wavered for a moment. He's just a baby, Emma pleaded. He's never hurt anyone. He doesn't even know who his father is. Please, Vincent, you can run away and start over somewhere else. But don't hurt an innocent child. Innocent? Vincent laughed bitterly. That child is evidence. Evidence that will destroy everything I've worked for. No, Marcus said firmly. That child is my son, and he's going to grow up knowing that his father fought for him. Marcus suddenly lunged forward, tackling Vincent around the waist. The 2 men crashed into the wall, fighting for control of the gun. Emma ran to the window and looked down at the street. Police cars were pulling up outside the building, their red and blue lights flashing in the darkness. Marcus, Emma called out. The police are here. But Marcus and Vincent were still struggling. They rolled across the floor, each trying to point the gun at the other. Emma realized that one of them was going to get shot if she didn't do something. Emma looked around the room desperately. She saw her purse sitting on the kitchen counter and suddenly remembered something Vincent didn't know about. 2 years ago, when Vincent had first threatened her, Emma had been carrying a small recording device that she used for her college classes. She had been so scared that night that she forgot she was recording until she got home. Emma had kept that recording all this time, hidden in a secret pocket of her purse. It wasn't in a safety deposit box like she had claimed. It was right here in her apartment. Emma grabbed her purse and pulled out the tiny recording device. Her hands shook as she turned it on and played the file from 2 years ago. Vincent's voice filled the room clear as day.
You heard me and Marcus talking about the Henderson deal.
You heard us discussing things that could get us both in serious trouble if the wrong people found out. Then Emma's younger, more frightened voice. I won't tell anyone. I just want to leave and never see any of you again. And Vincent again. That's not good enough. I can't take the chance that you might change your mind someday. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear. You're going to move far away and never come back. And if you ever try to contact Marcus or tell anyone what you heard, I'll make sure you and your baby have an accident. Marcus and Vincent both stopped fighting when they heard the recording. Vincent's face went white as he realized that Emma really had been telling the truth. You see? Emma said to Marcus. I tried to protect you by staying away. Vincent threatened us before Daniel was even born. Marcus looked at Vincent with pure hatred. You threatened my pregnant girlfriend. You made me believe she was lying about our baby. You stole from our company. And you've been planning to kill my family. Marcus, wait, Vincent started to say. But Marcus was beyond listening. 2 years of guilt, anger, and regret exploded out of him all at once. He grabbed the gun from Vincent's hand and pointed it directly at his former best friend's chest. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't pull this trigger right now, Marcus said. Because you're not a killer, Emma said softly, and because Daniel is watching. Marcus looked over at his son, who was staring at them with wide, confused eyes. Marcus realized that he didn't want Daniel's first real memory of his father to be an act of violence. Just then, the apartment door burst open, and police officers flooded into the room. Drop your weapons, the lead officer shouted. Everyone get on the ground. Marcus carefully placed Vincent's gun on the floor and raised his hands. Officers, I'm Marcus Stone. We called for help. This man, he pointed at Vincent, has been threatening my family. Emma held up the recording device. I have evidence of his crimes, she said. Everything you need to arrest him. The police quickly sorted out who was who. Vincent and his 2 injured men were arrested and taken away in handcuffs. The recording Emma had made was turned over to the detectives as evidence. As the police finished taking their statements, Marcus, Emma, and Daniel were finally alone together for the first time as a family. Emma, Marcus said quietly, I know I can never take back what I did to you. I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you had lied to me, part of my heart always belonged to you. Emma looked at him with tears in her eyes. I never stopped loving you either. Even after everything that happened, even when I was so angry I could barely breathe, I still loved you. Daniel, who had finally calmed down, reached out his little hands toward Marcus. Dada? He said experimentally, like he was testing out a new word. Marcus felt his heart break and heal at the same time. He gently took his son from Emma's arms and held him close. Yes, Marcus whispered to Daniel. I'm your daddy, and I'm never going away again. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Vincent's crimes came to light. He had been stealing millions of dollars from Stone Industries for years, setting up fake companies and forging documents. The FBI investigation revealed that Marcus had been completely innocent. He had signed papers without knowing what they really were because he trusted his best friend. Vincent was sentenced to 20 years in prison for theft, fraud, and threatening Emma and Daniel. Marcus sold Stone Industries and used the money to start a foundation that helped single mothers go to college. Emma finished her nursing degree and got a job at the city's best children's hospital. And 6 months after that terrible night in Emma's apartment, Marcus asked Emma to marry him. The proposal was simple and perfect. Marcus got down on one knee in the same coffee shop where he had first seen Daniel, with their son playing on the floor between them. Emma Martinez, Marcus said, will you give me the chance to be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning? will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the 2 years I lost with you and Daniel? Emma said yes through happy tears. On their wedding day, Daniel served as the ring bearer, carrying the rings in a tiny box down the aisle. He was 3 years old by then, and he proudly told everyone who would listen that he was helping his mama and daddy get married. Marcus kept his promise. He never left his family again. He was there for every milestone. Daniel's first day of school, his first baseball game, his graduation from high school, and eventually his wedding to a wonderful woman who loved him almost as much as his parents did. Years later, when Daniel had children of his own, he would ask his father to tell him the story of how his parents met and fell in love. Marcus would always start the story the same way. Once upon a time, there was a very foolish man who almost lost the most important things in his life because he forgot that love means believing in someone even when you're scared. And Emma would always add, but sometimes, if you're very lucky and very sorry, love gives you a second chance to get it right. Daniel would nod seriously and say, tell me the part about how you fought the bad guys to protect us. And Marcus would smile and say, the most important fight wasn't against the bad guys, son. The most important fight was against my own fear and pride, and your mother helped me win that battle. Emma and Marcus never forgot how close they came to losing each other forever. They never took their family for granted again. And they lived happily ever after, knowing that love, real love, is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible to win. The coffee shop where Marcus first saw his son became their favorite place to have breakfast on Sunday mornings. Sometimes other customers would look at the happy family and wonder what their story was. If they had known the truth, they would have understood that some fairy tales begin with heartbreak and almost end in tragedy. But the very best fairy tales end with a love that's strong enough to overcome anything, even the worst mistakes we make when we're too afraid to trust in happily ever after.